nothing left for me to hate, so I can lay me down, my brothers, on the ground. I bled today until Coyote comes to raise me up and carries me
Hello, welcome to the Scottish Rugby podcast. Johnny has made it back just in time. Well done, Johnny. Frantic during the intros there. Welcome everyone joining us live on the Scottish Rugby podcast night. And if you're listening back tomorrow, then hello, good evening. Very special episode tonight, but first of all, we'll get the motley crew out the way. I'm joined by our usual suspects. We've got Craig Manson. How the hell are you, Craig?
Evening all, doing great, thanks. Great to be here.
Glad to hear it, Craig. Glad to hear it. We've also got again. Do you pay for your lights by the like? Do you have to put money in the meter for those, Ian? Because
have you seen the price of electricity these days, mate? No, we just go for mood lighting. Also, apologies, I'm kind of halfway through McDonald's. It was late, so
keeping it professional, Ian. Love it. And we're also joined by. The man does got you. This is true, pal. This is true. We're also joined by Johnny, who again sneaked in last minute there. I had a wee panic during that, Johnny, because I thought, like you said, it crashed, but I was like, have I crashed?
No, it's just me.
Just you this time.
But I'm back.
That's good to hear.
I was back. I heard the last symbol of the intro as I came back in.
That's cutting it pretty fine. And as I said, a special episode tonight. We are joined by none other than Murray McCallum, Scotland international himself. Welcome, Murray. Great to have you along. How are you?
Aye, no bad. Trying to keep myself busy in the current redundant state, but I'm doing well. I'm all right.
Well, hopefully we'll have a good laugh for a wee bit of time with you, and we can see what's going on with various things. No doubt we'll touch on the circumstances around said redundant state. We can maybe have a wee bit of a moan and a groan about that because it's fairly nonsense. Those of you joining us, if you happen to be joining us for the first time, where have you been? But you can obviously support the podcast in its usual way. Head over to patreon.com/Scottish Rugby Podcast to subscribe to the content. You get exclusive content for your money, £3 a month, where you'll get the exclusive Hands in the Ruck section and some other stuff. Like Ian done some interviews recently. We've also had some Patreon specials up there, so well worth the pennies. Cost of a beer if you go to a cheap pub somewhere. Certainly not a beer on any of these. I was out in Glasgow the other night and beers are ridiculously expensive. This is like, what is the world coming to? I'm going to just start drinking at home, I think.
Let's see if that or you end up in a Wetherspoons.
You start making your own, it might be cheaper. I reckon.
I'll make your own. Absolutely. Well, I think that's the game, actually, isn't it? Like that's it's the gin. That's where it's at. Getting in the gin act.
John making frozen gin in a bathtub.
I'd go blind.
Prohibition John over there.
I don't worry, Murray. When this all goes horribly wrong, I'll reference back to this episode and be like, yeah, it was Murray's idea for me to start making gin in my bathtub.
I'll do it on the chin.
Hey, listen,
you've heard it here now. You know the new launch of Bathtub Gin, and it's and Murray's going to have to start wearing like shorts with Bathtub Gin on the arse of them and stuff like that when he's been at.
Loads of Scotland players make their own gin.
Yeah. It's like Johnny was saying there, like there's like Rory Jackson and that, they've got their own gin distillery.
Yep.
So Murray's just having to go full moonshine.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's it.
Go one better.
It's a bit fancy. We'll go white spirit with a bit of food colour in it or something like that.
None of this like fancy artisan gin like Rory Jackson's making.
It's called prop gin.
Make corn liquor in a basement in Dunfermline. Jobs are good.
I'll be able to sell it to Pfeiffer, definitely. It'll go very well, very well.
Yeah, so
not only can they drink it, they can run their motors off it.
For our fans in Fife and the surrounding areas, we do apologise for any offence caused, but he's not wrong. So so one of the things we tend to do when we get a guest on the podcast, Murray. Now this might be the first time we've had a guest who actually could do this, but one of the things we tend to ask is when the Barbarians come calling, as they inevitably will in your career. What's your sock makeup going to be?
Oh, that would. No, it would have to be Dunfermline and Herets.
Who's doing there? Who put Dunfermline?
I'm on mute. So.
Yeah, I would have to be Dunfermline and Herets. Depending how, because Dunfermline and Herets are quite similar at times, I might be able to sneak a Strathallan one in there, a school sock, because they certainly helped me out, getting me playing some rugby. But my main teams would definitely be Dunfermline and the Nails, because briefly at Grammar, and got great fun up at Aberdeen. But I'd have to be almost the first in the last of the clubs.
One of my former clubs as well, Aberdeen Grammar. It's that was a good laugh up there.
Oh, yeah.
Long time before you.
I'm kind of glad I didn't say Kirkcaldy, because I've just quit a job that the sponsors of Kirkcaldy Rugby Club at the moment are my now former employers.
You'd have seen Craig and I flipping our laptops if you'd said Kirkcaldy. I wouldn't worry about it.
Kirkcaldy were really good in my coaching journey, and I've always had good friends there. However, you never saw me turn out playing for them. I had good family friends, the Robertsons, growing up, and Billy was my age, and he played for Kirkcaldy, and his dad Sandy was coaching the Colts. He always said he'd get me along to play, but he didn't succeed.
Brilliant stuff. Yeah, it is a bit weird having like an actual professional rugby player who might potentially play for the Barbarians to answer that question.
If Ryan Wilson can get to go and play for the Barbarians, anyone's got a chance, man. Jesus.
Man, you behave yourself. Very nice tonight.
He's at it already.
I know, that's it, yeah. Don't you worry, Craig, I've got plenty scheduled for that nonsense. The other big burning question, and this has been asked of former Scotland captains. It's been asked of massive people in Scottish rugby. And this is the big debate. I want you could be the voice to settle this tonight, Murray. Flake, twirl, or ripple?
Twirl, because you get 2 bits in it.
Yes.
Oh, that's got potential.
That's a props answer right there.
It's a flake bit of the mess.
Ripple's probably the most indulgent one, I'd say. Flake's not got the protection on the outside, so it's good. Too much drops in you. Ripple's certainly got the most indulgence in it, but you get 2 bits with twirl, so you've got to go with that.
So there you go, folks. And do you know what?
That's a fairly definitive answer, actually.
It is. I was hoping.
Comprehensive for chocolate.
Comprehensive.
Did Laidlaw not say flake though? Like a pure weirdo.
Laidlaw said flake, but he like.
He's metronomic though with his kicking. He'd be very precise with the way he eats it. When he drop anything, it'd be all over me. All over me.
It is a brutal feeling when you like start smashing into a flake or a twirl or whatever.
Oh, those bits, like, It's later
You
on
find
when
a
you
bit of
roll
chocolate.
over off the couch and you're like, oh, I've just melted someone at the couch now.
That's the worst. It's not like it's crumbs. The chocolate will stick to your clothes. It sticks to the couch. Oh,
And because it's wee bits, it melts so quickly as well. It's
aye.
everywhere.
The worst one is when you're out actually going into a job and you've been in the car and the bit of flake has gone down between the seatbelt and your shirt, and it's just made a nice brown mark right here, and then you look like a total fan. I can't say anything. I'm not
if you're eating flakes on your way in to meet clients, that's a you problem, Craig. Like that is a schoolboy error, and you deserve everything you get. Just buy a twirl.
Just buy a twirl. Well, there you go. That probably solves a lot of the debate here. But you know, I think definitive answer from Murray. Right enough. Very, very comprehensive. So thank you for that. Shall we? We're only 13 minutes in. Shall we think about some rugby then, guys?
We have to, yeah.
Well, there's a fuss for everything, isn't there?
Yeah. Well, let's cover. Obviously, we've got Murray with us tonight. Absolutely delighted to have him here. Let's cover the news down south just coming out today, where we've got Wasps being suspended from the league, just about to enter administration in the next couple of days. Mirroring some of the situation that's obviously you've just been through, Murray. So, the first thing I want to kind of talk to you about, like from a player's perspective, obviously there was rumours doing the rounds for quite some time around Worcester. How hard is it as a player in that environment?
I mean, it's brutal. It's brutal just to get your head round. But that's probably more for the playing aspect and the kind of training. The mental side of it is made much easier when you are in the club and you've got the gaffer. You've got Dimes who's like he's trying to steady the ship and keep us kind of on the straight and narrow and keep us calm, and the other coaches doing their jobs to kind of provide sessions and lead in that sense. But then the fact that all the boys are in there as well and they're all going through the same thing really helped in terms of us just obviously you saw the hashtag together and everything like that. But it was that's exactly what it was. It kept us all kind of talking about it and reassuring ourselves, or if we wanted, digging ourselves a hole and going into a spiral, which you need sometimes. But it's been an absolute roller coaster, particularly the last 2 months. I mean, there's been kind of troubles, it's been rather apparent kind of financial troubles for a few months, but when it started hitting the news and then obviously the most recent kind of happenings, that's when you were like, right, okay, this isn't looking great.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned Steve Diamond during that as well. That like it was. I found it very obviously in that situation you want people to step up, and Steve Diamond didn't exactly have the best reputation as at some of the clubs he's been at, but it sounds like everyone has spoken so highly of him, and from what kind of came out in the way he was behaving during everything, it sounds like he was an absolutely brilliant.
Oh yeah, I have to agree. He was fantastic, and kind of keeping us positive and just keeping the boys going. He always gave us a choice in terms of he'd voice his opinion in terms of I think you should maybe do this, or this is my take on things. But then he always did give the boys a choice whether they wanted to kind of train or not or play. I mean, he's a good leader. He's convincing with some of his arguments. Some boys, me in particular, me as well. I would have gone into training a couple of days saying, I'm not doing it today. I'm not doing it. I'm not being paid, no training. But then you'd listen to his argument and you'd speak to other boys and you're like, you know what, we can maybe get a go for another kind of couple of weeks, couple of days, see what the crack is. And he did. He helped. He did kind of fight to the end from his kind of leading perspective. And boys followed him into battle.
How did you find the real juxtaposition with him then? Because obviously, he was well documented when he first came into the club, of basically telling everyone, look, those that aren't doing the job are risking their livelihood here when he first joined. And then, obviously he's trying to get a performance out of certain players. And then all of a sudden, it really just seemed to be, I guess I suppose he's a straight talker, and you'll always thank him for that. But it seemed a real juxtaposition that all of a sudden he's gone from this. These guys need to sort themselves out, and then all of a sudden he's now keeping you all together. How did you? Was there that sort of, this guy's an absolute idiot when he first joins, and then all of a sudden, then he's proven himself, or did you like him from the start?
Obviously, he's like you mentioned earlier, John. His reputation kind of precedes him the way. In his time, he hadn't been in before. Obviously, with Sale and Saracens and whatever, he did have a bit of a reputation in the league. And boys, obviously, like myself, kind of inexperience in the Prem and around himself, were a bit kind of apprehensive to approach him at the start, because he did. When I first came in, obviously, it was Solly was still there and JT was there and Dimes was just in as a kind of consultant. And then kind of we got back for the Zebra week and boom, JT had parted ways and Dimes had come in and taken over. And I think there was certainly a lot of, I'd say worried and potentially, I wouldn't say scared, but just mainly worried and kind of apprehensive boys like, oh God, how are we going to get a game? Is he going to bring boys in? Who knows? But to be fair to him, he was honest from the get go. He gave boys chances, and he rewarded boys playing well, and he did stick with boys even if they might not have had the best game to begin with. But as long as they didn't, if you screw up once, right sound, screw up twice, all the best. And he was, certainly my personal opinion, my personal experience. He was incredibly honest with me. And we built, and I think we've built quite a good relationship throughout our time at Worcester, and I really enjoyed working under him.
Fantastic.
It's you mentioned there, Murray. Obviously, almost rewarding people playing well, and I think one of the things that's kind of come out of this, we've all been desperate to see you get game time. Obviously, you've spent time at both Edinburgh and Glasgow, and then going down there. And seeing the performances you were building, starting to put in, and I think the frustration is, you're starting to get that game time, and then obviously abruptly gets cut short. I can see you shaking your head. I'm sure it's quite
some momentum, and it just gets taken. And it's incredibly frustrating. Incredibly frustrating. Sorry if I cut you off there.
Not at all. No. It was kind of just. I was sure it was quite frustrating for you.
100%.
So obviously, with everything that's happened, you found yourself, as you said, in the redundant state. What's next for you? Where's irons in the fire?
Certainly, conversations being had. My poor agent's working double time. I've got him certainly in this keep, but I've put all my trust in him and the other boys he has kind of working with him to do the job for me. And we don't, and obviously, hopefully I'll have a couple of options to consider here, hopefully, and I will obviously consult with the missus, consult with my agent, and see what he thinks would be best for my development, because ultimately I want to be playing rugby. And I also do want to get back in that national team, because I have some serious unfinished business there. It's been 4 years, and I've not had a game at Murrayfield yet. So
that's something actually that I was going to ask you in terms of getting back into the Scotland team and stuff. That I've always been kind of curious about is, you're obviously saying you're going to hopefully going to have a couple of options. Perfect world, would you, for your development and getting yourself back into the Scotland setup, would you want to come to Glasgow or Edinburgh, where you're training and playing week in, week out with the guys who are looking for the same jerseys? Or did you like kind of when you and Rory were down in Worcester, you're a little bit further away in the Prem or in France, and you're kind of out of the log jam a little bit and getting a chance to show what you could do on your own? What would you prefer if you had the choice?
Obviously, I love being back up at home with my mates, and that's kind of, I'll always consider, obviously, Edinburgh as my first club is home, and in Glasgow playing with them, and I've got lots of mates at both clubs. But the main thing for me is playing rugby, and I want to play, and I want to play at a high level, and I want to play consistently. And you mentioned yourself there, Johnny, about there's a lot of players up north fighting for the jerseys, and if you're fighting for the jersey at club level, and you might not be getting the kick of the ball there, you're certainly not going to get it at national level. So having us kind of spread out benefits all of us, I'd say, because then we're all playing rugby. Obviously, we want Scottish rugby to do incredibly well, and we want Glasgow and Edinburgh to do incredibly well, but then we don't want to stunt the development of our own players if they can be playing regular rugby elsewhere, which myself, Rory and Duhan all were, and thankfully Rory and Duhan are sorted out, and they will continue to play at a high level, and hopefully I will as well. And I'd like to find myself somewhere where I can be just playing, like I said, playing regularly, because that's how you build momentum. It's how you build confidence. It's how you build match fitness, and that's what you need going into national camp. I'll always have a rapport with the boys up there because they're my pals, and that's home. And I'll always be able to come back to that and fall back into it if I hopefully do end back up in camp at some point.
And I think it. Sorry, on you go, Ian.
So it's kind of one sort of similar to what Murray was saying. Obviously, we've got our Twitter friend Sam Larner. He does good analyst, and when he was doing his, he said when he unfortunately had to sort of say, here's where I think Worcester's players would best fit. You were in at Glasgow Warriors.
I did see that.
Yep. And now, I just sort of remember from my time, like when Ollie Kebble got moved from loosehead to tighthead. I think there's guys like yourself and Darcy Ray and Alex Allen maybe haven't been given enough game time at Scottish clubs, and maybe been not exactly pushed out, but because other foreign recruits have come in who needed to be captured by residency. Do you like? I think particularly your position, it needs game time to develop, especially sort of that match intensity, that going up against gnarly looseheads.
100%. Playing rugby, particularly as a prop, is what you need to be doing, and I always say that to youngsters. I obviously played for Dunfermline. I played for Aberdeen Grammar in that too. I then played at Heriots in the Prem. I've been loaned out to Derek O'Riordan picked me for bloody Accies one year. In the draft, him and Kane from those Dunfermline pals picking me for Accies. So and as long as you're playing rugby regularly as a prop, particularly as a young prop, that's going to be the best thing for your development. And that's what I always kind of say to kind of budding youngsters, like, unless you're going to play at the top club, just go and get your head shoved up your arse by some grizzly old man, and that too, away to Selkirk, away to Peebles when I was at Grammar. God, I had some horrible things happen to me, but it helped so much. And it is just playing rugby is the main thing for a prop.
Because that's like even Johnny Gray. Like Johnny Gray played for Cambuslang, which is where I'm from, and he was like stage 3. Sort of, we'll have you in the Warriors training camp. He was like, nah, I want to go and play national too.
That's it, right? Walk play at home if they can.
And I think that's the thing, though. And in my humble opinion, we are quite threadbare at tighthead in the international game. Now, I know, obviously, you have to kind of distance yourself from us talking about other players, and we're not going to embarrass you by doing that. But we have got, if especially in the form, and I'm going to sound like I'm sucking up to you here because I've already said to you that you're playing well. But and looking at what you were doing at Worcester, you were putting your hand up and saying, "I'm here," because I think your form has absolutely come on and on with Worcester and playing in the Prem. So, there is that. I'm sure there's got to be that opportunity to get the jersey back.
I appreciate that, Craig, and the coaching staff have kept in touch. Like I mentioned to you fellas earlier on, I was up in Edinburgh for the last, or Edinburgh and Dunfermline, between my missus' mums and my own mums in Fife, and I bumped into all the Scotland coaches at the game as I stole out hospitality that Doug Struth very kindly with a pint in each hand because I'm taking them out in the plastic glasses so I can have them for the first half. And I get the tap on the shoulder, and it's Gregor Townsend, and he's like, "Hello, Murray," and I'm like, "Ah." Followed by JD, bloody Gav Vaughan, AB, and Steve Tandy. So that was a good laugh. But,
Do you have a cigarette hanging at your mouth at the same time?
I just had the flag out. No, none of that, Jess, none of that. But no, they have kept in touch, and they've and a couple of the coaches came down to watch our training session before we played Newcastle, our last week of rugby at Worcester, and they came down and we caught up with them there, and they mentioned that it's just good to see boys playing regularly, because that's just what all boys want to do.
Absolutely.
That looked like a hell of a weekend, that Newcastle weekend.
That looked amazing, yeah. It was some game.
It was that was good fun. We had starting on Friday, we had a Zoom call with the RPA, PRL, RFU, and all of our staff and all our players before we went and did the team run, basically to find out what the crack is, and we didn't know the crack. It wasn't said, but it was suspensions looming, X, Y, and Z, and then Dimes turned and asked us, and he was like, "Are we going to play?" On camera to everyone. And then all the kind of folk on the camera were like, "Oh, I don't know." So he gave us a bit, and we all ticked or crossed on a bit of paper, handed it back into Dimes, and it was like, right, two thirds decide and 73% or something. I think he said we'll play. So we actually we got given the decision, do you actually want to play tomorrow? And then I'm glad we did, because we went out and played bloody well. And really enjoyed it, and as you will have seen, because it was all kind of documented online, we went out into Worcester after that. Ollie Lawrence, it was his 23rd birthday the week before. Keep forgetting how young he is. 23rd birthday the week before.
I was going to say, is Ollie Lawrence only 23?
He's a bairn, mate.
Aye.
And bloody good at rugby.
Yeah.
And we'd sorted out Cadena, one of the bars in town, to make sure everyone got into that. So it was, and then Dimes had already mentioned he was at we have a social after Newcastle, and then all the boys, like Ollie, everyone kind of turned and looked at Ollie, and Ollie went, "We've kind of got one sorted," and he went, "Sound, we're coming," and he was like, "All right." So all the staff rocked up as well, and then once suspension was confirmed, there was a couple of Sunday day twos knocking about, and then training resumed the next week.
So, from a practical perspective, Murray, obviously, how you managed training whilst everything was obviously kind of in flux there?
Yes and no.
Yes and no.
We had conversations before Irish. We'd maybe had one contact session, one or two scrum sessions, because we were like, we're not sure we're not playing. If we're not paid, we're not playing, or no, everything like that. So, like, we tried not to use it as an excuse, but we were undercooked for that game. We hadn't done as much like proper smash that we'd wanted to. Yeah. So training did obviously go ahead, but it was, the players just said, like, we're not doing that at the moment because we don't know what the crack is. And then by the time after Irish, we're like, you know what, we're in the Prem now, we're in the season, we need to do it. So we just kind of pulled our socks up and we're like, sound, we'll get on with it.
Yeah, I remember one of the coaches being on the ITV highlights programme actually after Irish, saying basically we're a month behind everybody else.
Oh, easily, yeah. And obviously we binned the Glasgow game, which was gutting for myself. I was looking forward to that. And I felt for all those boys as well. Luckily, they still got a bit of a hit out against the Bulls, against good old Ayr. But it wasn't the best for both parties. And I had boys messaging me like, "Are you playing?" I'm like, "Mate, we've not been paid." And then it was the next day, we still hadn't been paid. And then I got paid. We got paid about 8:30 Friday night, 2-3 days late. So that's why, and then that was so. But by then, obviously, they were on the pitch. They were playing in their pre-season game against the Bulls. So that's why nothing ever happened.
Once everything kind of came to an end at Worcester, though, how have you kept fit since then? What have you been training since, or
luckily the administrators allowed access to 6 ways at the moment, strict times and things like that. If you want just to use the pitch, because obviously the building and that's insured, because there are people kind of cutting about. So, but just we've not got any trainers, so we can go in and use it. There's been the people down here, the community down here, have been incredible. We've had various offers of people allowing boys to go and use their facilities, which has been great. So, but because you want to use a good pitch and you want to try and use a good gym, because I've done my fair share of running on dodgy parks and farm tracks, and that's the last thing you need when you've not got a physio there now, is to roll your ankle in a rabbit hole.
Absolutely, absolutely. Especially the big thing with it is as you forget, or we forget that not having just a basic thing of a physio, because of the we get pissed off if our car breaks down on the way to work, because that's part of our job, and your body is your job, so it must be really frustrating.
Oh, yeah, it is incredibly frustrating, because obviously we do know that we want to keep fit and stay as match fit as possible, but it's trying to weigh that up with the risk of maybe having that, and also the motivation, because at the moment when you've not got a club, the peaks and the troughs, obviously our motivation, everyone's motivation is to get a contract and stay in good nick and stay on as much as possible. But like some days you wake up and you're like, I am flat. Like this is like nothing's happening today. So you do and obviously with a newborn as well, I'm on my feet a fair whack with a little one throughout the day. So it's been nice to have that time with her, and also give Lorna a break from full-time motherhood. So yeah, it's an interesting time for us all.
Absolutely.
Indeed. So, Murray, I mentioned earlier on that you've obviously played both Edinburgh and Glasgow. I think I know the answer to this, but which one did you prefer?
Myself,
I like them both for different reasons. I like them both for very different reasons, but Edinburgh will obviously always be very special to me in terms of it's my home professional club, and I've played over 60 games there. That's the club that helped me get capped and gave me my first run out and things like that. But then again, Glasgow, they threw me a lifeline. I was in a black hole of rugby players the back end of last season. 2 seasons ago in the 2021, and with obviously Xander being away with the Lions and boys being away with Scotland, they were like, look, we need someone. Do you fancy it for 6 months? And I was like, yes, get me in. I'm in. And so they threw me a lifeline, and I owe them a lot for that. I owe Danny Wilson a lot for that, for giving me that gig. And I sorted myself out to Worcester shortly after that. But yeah, so Edinburgh will always be my number one, but Glasgow, they did a really important thing for me. So
do you mind me asking, how did the whole Worcester thing come about? Was it Alan Solomon that kind of guided them towards it?
My agent's John Andres. You'll remember him. Yeah. So he's and he obviously played under Solly as well. And Worcester had a couple injuries, and they were kind of a bit underdone at tight head and at prop. So they got in touch. It was after. So I played a Newcastle pre-season game for Glasgow. That wasn't my best. Played against Worcester was much better. Played against Ulster. I felt like I was building some momentum. And then I had the Zoom call after Ulster. After the Ulster game with JT and is that with JT? Yeah, I think it was with JT and Solly. I remember speaking to Luke Broadley, our manager, and Coxie. She was she did a lot of the logistics managing. So it happened pretty early in the season, and I know Glasgow were potentially looking to keep me for the year, and they were kind of trying to locate funds and see what the crack was. But then the opportunity is something what I thought would be a bit longer term at Worcester came about, and it got me, like we spoke about earlier on, away from, obviously not away from my pals because I don't like that. I don't like being away from your pals, but then being away from a team that has the likes of Xander and Berge and Kevil and Batty and everyone like that. Not that I'm not one that wants to fight for a position, but it means that we can all be playing. And that's exactly what Worcester presented to me, was a massive opportunity to play. So much so that after I was meant to be 24th man against Edinburgh on the 27th of December, but when that got called off because of COVID, I had calls that night. I drove down to Worcester. I got released from my contract a few days early. Drove down to Worcester on the 28th. Played against Gloucester, which actually was the biggest crowd of the year between Christmas and New Year. Everyone just wanted to piss up. Again, the Prem Cup midweek. We beat Gloucester on the 29th. I went out and got to know the boys in Worcester Town that night, and then drove back to Edinburgh to my flat for New Year. That's how much I just wanted to play rugby. I got down and played that game, and then came back up, packed my bags, and then got back down that Sunday.
Oh. That's a week.
So there's the question I'm going to have to ask. Sorry,
no, go Craig.
But it's just with the whole prop thing. What's you'll obviously you've come up against a fair few of the well-known props within the English league now. Any highlights? Any people that you thought were going to be difficult but weren't? Anybody you got one over on that you really, really were happy about?
It's, to be fair, I'm not going to be out here kind of bagging props and saying that.
No, I wasn't. Yeah,
because there's not many. I tell you what, there's no props in the Prem that are dug me, because you can't be in that league. But I remember particularly going up against. I know he did take a couple of penalties off of us, but I remember playing Loosehead. It was actually a couple of Loosehead games. One against Quinns. Against Will Collier, and he before he kind of took a knock at the start of this season, he was very much in form, and so it was good testing myself against him, and I enjoyed that. And then we didn't have a particularly effective scrum last year for a variety of reasons. We weren't clicking, and we went into the Wasps game away and took 2 penalties off them in my time on the pitch. We didn't concede any, and we were pretty dominant. And I was up against Bialo, and he's a big fella. That man can scrummage. We got it right that day, which was really positive. And I'm trying to think tight head wise, we had Exeter this year at the start of the season. Obviously they're a big pack, and they're an effective pack. And against Alec Hepburn, obviously he's been trucking about in the Prem for a little while, and he's a handy player. I felt like we scrummaged very, very well against them this season. So yeah, I've come up against some crackers already. Cooney Eusthuizen was the tight head I played against in my first game for Worcester at Loosehead, and then the last game of the season against Bath, I had a pretty positive game when I came off the bench at tight head. So I've come up against some corkers so far in my few months here. So at the moment.
Did you ever get Ellis Genge?
No. I never got Ellis Genge. Not at the. I wouldn't want to say the pleasure of playing against him, because the man's a monster. He is an incredible rugby player, that man.
And could you frighten him the same way John Welsh did?
To be fair, that was Welsh's got he's got a couple of tricks in his pocket. That man, he's pretty handy.
See, under 18s boxing champion, so like he was an Asian boxing champion.
Yeah, boxing. Yeah. Welsh would be good with his hands. I'd imagine in that sense.
I was just saying, Murray, what side of the scrum do you prefer?
Well, I'd say different reasons for both. If I'm honest, I could probably see myself, and I want to play tight head and progress at tight head with.
I was waiting for that.
Come on. Where you've spoken about there being more of an opportunity with with the country lacking in numbers for the national team as well, because we are stacked at Loosehead. But again, I just want to be playing rugby, and as long as I'm getting sufficient reps on both sides, I'm keen to play both sides. I just want to be playing code and scrummaging, because even if I'm playing one side in a game at the weekend, I'll try and get reps on the other side as well in training, just so I'm keeping it up.
It's a rare prop that plays both sides. I suppose you find it more in the club game, but it's a rare prop nowadays that plays both sides in the professional game.
Yeah, I enjoy it. It's good fun. I haven't done many. I've done both sides in one game many times. There's a few times I did it for Edinburgh, and I did it in the Prem Cup final last year when I can't remember if I've done it any other times recently. I did it for Heriot's quite a few, but yeah, in the professional game, there's been a handful for Edinburgh, and then obviously one for Worcester.
It's a great skill to have in your locker anyway, and certainly it'll, as you said, getting game time. It's a great way to ensure you're always going to be there or thereabouts, and it seems to be quite a. I don't know, like maybe with the move towards kind of, obviously Gregor Townsend talks a lot about kind of multi-positional players and people being able to cover all sorts of different places in case of emergency. What was the conversation like when they said, do you fancy going the other way, and do you fancy trying a wee bit of the other side of propping, or is it just something you've always kind of put your hand up and said, I can do this?
I was actually just put in it loose. I played tight end when I was growing up. That's just where I was the big fella. I was the fridge of a bloody 14-year-old. So they were like, right, you're going there. And then it was at under 18s and under 20s to have Xander at tight head, and then they're like, you're going to play loose head. I was like, you sound. And then it was Stevie Scott and Alan Solomons who sat me down when I was in the academy, and they're like, you're going to play tight head. Look at the shape of you. You are going to be tight head. I was like, sound. I was like, put me there, I'll play it. And it came a bit sooner than they planned at Edinburgh, when that was the season. WP had a pretty dodgy neck. Bergie had a bit of tough toe, and they brought in a couple of boys on loan that just they didn't seem particularly. Kevy Bryce took a knock, and then they brought in a couple of loan boys that they didn't seem to want to play. So they had a rather overweight, even more unfit than I am now, Murray McCallum, 19-year-old Murray McCallum, trucking out. I was in the squad. I remember, because it was my first season. My dad had it all on bloody spreadsheets and that. He loved it. And I had
don't get John started on spreadsheets, by the way. Christ.
I was in the squad 23 times and played 21 games at 19 at both sides, to be fair. That season I played loads on both sides. I think I played almost half and half for Edinburgh that 2016-17 season. And yeah, so it was Stevie and Solly that sat me down and said, you're going to do that. And then since I played under 20s at loose head and a little bit at tight head, I've always kind of jumped around.
Was that? I'm trying to think, because I did a scrum coaching session with the SRU with Stevie down at Murrayfield. I'm trying to think if that was about that same time, because was Fordy still hooking at that time?
Oh, yeah. I played a few seasons with Fordy.
All right, because that was when I always remember Stevie saying, at that time, hooking wasn't the most important thing.
It wasn't compulsory, and that was something Edinburgh did. And I remember actually, he was getting a bit anxious before one of the games. We had Ulster at home in that first season, and he asked Neil Cochrane before the game. I wouldn't say he didn't have trust in us. He was probably just a bit kind of apprehensive, because it was Jack Cosgrove at loose head and me at tight head, and then Neil Cochrane at hooker. And he asked Nelly, and he was like, "You're going to hook today?" And Nelly went, "No, I'm not going to hook." And we were very, very neutral all day, and we won that game. Ruan Pienaar, Charles Piatow, the lot playing for Ulster, and I remember we won at Murrayfield, and it was.
I remember that game.
That was class. That was my first start in the Pro 14, which was or was it still the Pro 12 or Pro 14? I can't mind.
I think it was the 14 at that time.
Don't even get started on the what the league was called. What
I
it's
can
called.
imagine you boys will have a lot to say about all that.
Listen, the Ultimate Fighting Championship is what it is now, so that's the way it is.
Yeah, that's it.
It's going well. It's a bloody good comp at the moment, and whoever, and obviously they've got Rock Nation there. Whoever's behind the kind of marketing and advertising, they are selling it, and it's an exciting league. So all the rebrands aside, they're playing them.
Yeah, they've made the people who said it was a dingy competition compared to the Prem and the top 14 look really silly, because it seems like the most stable of all the competitions now. And
exactly,
and it's exciting.
We just unit administration liquidated, and Wasps look like they're dust as well. That's brutal.
But then there's 2 Welsh teams who are insisting on joining English.
See you later then.
Wow. Good call, guys.
So what's your take on what's going on at Edinburgh just now then, with the way that the performance of Edinburgh? What's your take now? Obviously,
you're just desperate to get someone else to say Edinburgh are great, aren't you?
Listen, don't they start your Glasgow bias pish now? But obviously, there's been we had a fairly big upturn when Cockers was about, and then it kind of tailed off a little bit, and then we've got Mike Blair in. What's your take on it? What do you hear? I'm not looking for gossip. I'm talking more about what do you hear from the boys? Everyone seems to be enjoying the rugby there. What's your thoughts?
Oh, the environment's fantastic. The boys are really enjoying going into work, and they're working hard. And Mike's given them license to try just to play rugby and play what's in front of them. Obviously, he'll have a game plan. What that is, I mean, I've not obviously studied Edinburgh. I've not had to this year in terms of analysis or anything. But from what I've seen of them, they do play some kind of exciting stuff, and the boys are enjoying it. I know Blair's loving having that responsibility at 10. Because obviously in previous years it might have been more to the coach's game plan, and it might not have had much say from the players. However, I think players have a lot more autonomy now at the club, and are enjoying and embracing that responsibility that they've been given.
And that's the thing. What's again, okay, it's very Edinburgh centric, because obviously I'm the Edinburgh voice in this sea of Glasgow. But what's your take on the whole Blair Kinghorn 10? Obviously, he played there when he was coming through the youth section, etc. And he started as a 10. I'm not going to ask you the question of whether you'd rather have him at 15 or 10, but obviously for me, he's come on leaps and bounds. But he seems to be a guy that could play anywhere in the back line, and he would put in a huge performance. What's your take on it?
Blair's just a terrific rugby player, and he loves playing rugby and being on the pitch. And I think whatever position that the coach wants him to be, he's incredibly adaptable. And as long as that coach shows him belief and gives him confidence, Blair will go out and kill it. Because Mike's given him that confidence and responsibility, like I said, to play 10, and he's given him the chance to express himself and I reckon have say on attack and plays within the team, and Blair's relishing that opportunity, and is as you can see, building some form and going very well.
So Craig's absolutely right. So that's that side of the M8 covered. So Murray Warrior 333, just to remind you of that.
Here we go.
Yeah, no, you mentioned earlier on, obviously you played under Danny Wilson at Glasgow. Things didn't necessarily work out that well in the end up for Wilson at Glasgow, but what was your feel at the club around? Who was Danny Wilson as a coach, first of all? And
I like Danny. I think I rate him as a coach, I rate him as a person. He was good. He was. Things didn't seem to click at the club towards the end, and obviously ultimately the man in charge gets the boot. That's the way of life, and he's well aware of that, and I mean, anyone in the job's aware of that. It goes coaches, then players. And someone asked to shift, and sadly it was Danny on that occasion. But no, I got on with him incredibly well. I knew him from my brief involvement in Scotland camps while he was there. And no, he like I said, he gave me the opportunity. I've got no qualms with him. And when I was there, games I played, we should have beaten Ulster in that first game of the season last year. God, we should have beaten Ulster. I was fizzing at the. I can't remember who the ref was. I was fizzing at the scrums at the end. I think it was me and Batty that were on, and we had a bit of dominance, and he wasn't giving us anything.
Was it Whitehouse?
I'd forgotten how hard.
You might, yeah. I think that might be him. Ian, it might have been.
I think it was.
I think it was Ben. But yeah, we were slightly frustrated after that game.
It's like I usually kind of like Ben Whitehouse, but then like there's been a couple of games. There's another one, Warriors against Munster in Tobin Park, when I saw the Munster team and I thought we were going to get murdered here, and we took it to them like to the death, and it was amazing. The back row was Ash, Cully, I can't remember who was 6, but we had George Horn, Pete Horn, 9-10. Like Munster had O'Mahony and Keith Earls, like they had their frontline guys out,
the big guns out.
And then it was at the very last second of the game, Ben Whitehouse gave a really terrible decision because O'Mahony takes Cully out of the ruck with no miles beyond getting to the ruck, and then Sanders off his feet as he, allegedly jackals.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, it was fizz. I mean,
it's not like you to remember this in so much detail yet.
I'd woke up at daft o'clock in the morning that day because I'd just downloaded Red Dead Redemption 2, and I played Red Dead Redemption 2 for like 11 hours, and then I went, I'm actually turning this off because this game is so good right now.
I'm just really impressed that Ian's got through that whole discussion about Munster and he hasn't sworn once.
I know.
That's amazing.
Only 7 minutes to go, Ian, and then you can tell.
They are sitting in my belly right now. All the worst. It's like Malcolm Tucker just sitting here.
Pure niche detail from Ian, as expected, though. So we'll finish off, Murray. Just a couple of last questions for you. So one of our patrons has asked, I'm not going to ask you to name 3, but they've said, if you were to write the ultimate props cookery book, what would be your signature dish?
Oh, pulled pork.
Oh, be still.
Excellent.
Yeah, doing amazing pulled pork.
Pulled pork with brioche buns. Probably a purple slaw because it looks fancier, and pickles.
I'm hungry.
On top. Right?
I'm hungry.
You're always hungry.
Yeah, that would certainly be the go-to. That's an absolute winner.
Sounds good. We need you back playing some rugby, mate, so you can get that restaurant opened.
Right, exactly.
Scotland players have done, and we'll get over
the
for
Scottish
some
Rugby podcast Smoking Pit is officially
open. There you go. Which player which player, past, present, future, whatever, do you most admire of any nationality, and why?
Oof. I'd say Mossy.
Yep.
Watching him truck out and watching him absolutely tear up for someone that should fold like a wet trackie every time he was hit. He was hard as nails and was certainly one of the reasons that many people in my generation got into rugby and loved watching Scotland play. He was a big inspiration for boys growing up. Certainly not for people not for everyone my size. We did look up to Chunk, but Chunk gave us a lot of hope for the big boys. But watching Mossy truck out, he did it for the weir fellas, and it was great to watch growing up.
That tackle on Ben Foden back in 2009, 10 was that?
That was
what computer game came out that day, Ian?
Sorry?
What computer game came out that day?
Rugby 04. Remember him running all the way across the length, like the width of the pitch, to get that tap tackle and drag Foden out of touch. And Foden was probably a far faster man, over 100 metres, but just the reading of Mossy.
He just punched well above his weight in that department, didn't he?
Says a lot about his mentality as well. That was like, I think it's safe to say that wasn't a terribly successful Scotland team. We weren't exactly, world beaters, and to be able to kind of go out there and do that constantly, and it was never anything less than 100% from him. So, what to be said, true legend.
If we could stay in the game, then we could just trust his boot.
Exactly.
I remember having a conversation with a boy. I was watching, I think it was Scotland-Wales down at Millennium Stadium as it was at the time, and we were talking about, I think Wales had scored early, and it's like, don't worry, it's only 3 parts and penalties, we're fine.
When I was a student in Wales, I went out, like Old Firm game kicked off at like noon, and then Scotland-Wales kicked off at 2:30, and I went into student union and just basically get absolutely wrecked. And it's when Mossy took over kicking for Kenny Logan.
Wow.
Kenny Logan missed a couple. 2000.
You didn't want to know. You didn't want to start talking about age, because I remember when I was 16 with the first 15 members going down.
Mossy wasn't playing you were 16, mate.
No, David Soul was, and Craig Chalmers, and that fateful day on that we ended up doing Rose Street, absolutely. And I don't remember getting a train home. On that day. That's when you stood in the north stand, and there was no cover. So that's how old I am.
Showing your age, indeed. So we're coming up to the end of the hour, guys. So we're going to drop off the kind of free stuff. Murray, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for putting up with our daft questions as well. Solving some of the world's biggest mysteries.
Of course,
as well.
Definitely. So,
definitely. Well, there you go. It is definitive. For those that pay their Patreons, pay your dues. You can hang around. We're going to be cutting loose a wee bit for the next hour behind the paywall. Murray, you're welcome to join us.
See, when we talk about the Women's World Cup game, I'm going to swear a lot.
It's like that I might as well, actually.
Yeah, I deliberately decided I was going to bring the women's game into it, and I thought, you know what, there was a segue at one point when we were talking. I was like, no, Ian's going to need therapy for this. So I thought, we'll keep this behind the paywall so we can cut loose a wee bit. But for those patrons who want to keep with us, please hang about. Otherwise, it is good night from me. Good night from Murray, Craig, Ian, and Johnny.
Ciao.
Cheers, guys.
And I'll just figure out how to turn all this off again because I'm still got it.